Three tomatoes are walking down the street. Papa tomato, mama tomato, and baby tomato.
Playing Catch-Up presents.
Starring Lindsay Hinkle and Jamie Nelson.
So this is Playing Catch-Up, is it? I prefer something with a little more kick.
Everybody's favorite condiment-themed entertainment podcast.
Put some hot sauce on my burrito, baby!
Hot sauce.
Nobody puts ketchup on a hot dog.
You're listening to Hot Sauce on PlayingCatchUpPodcast.com. I'm your host, Jamie Nelson, and with me, my co-host, Lindsay Hinkle. How are you, Lindsay?
I'm good. How are you, Jamie?
I'm pretty good. We're talking about storytelling, and I have a bone to pick with storytellers right now.
All of them?
One of them. No, all of them.
What's wrong?
Well, you see, a few years ago, I wrote this novel, and I got a grant, so I spent, lots of grant money on getting it edited, and I had about 10 people read it and edit it for me and all this stuff, and I worked really hard on it, as people do when they write novels, and then, I put it in a drawer for a bit just to, fresh my mind of it so I could look at it again later, and then this year, this book came out. It sounds exactly like my book, and just to be clear, 100% I am not claiming that this guy stole my story idea, but I think that we're both equally guilty of being extremely cliche and unoriginal if we basically wrote the same book. Let me read my synopsis and let me read his synopsis and tell me if they sound a little bit similar.
Okay.
So my synopsis is, there is a song that when played correctly will make the musician's soul become the envy of every angel in heaven and demon in hell, triggering the apocalypse. The chords are scattered in ruins and hieroglyphics until one day a child prodigy uncovers them. And here's the book that actually came out. Deep beneath the Egyptian sands, an ancient and evil song is written in hieroglyphics. It's discovered in the long-last blah 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 pharaoh blah blah blah. It is written that if this song is performed for the world to hear, it will unleash the apocalypse upon the world of man.
Wow.
A little bit similar?
A little bit similar. Yeah, I can see why you'd be upset.
Yeah, I'm not entirely upset just because I've gotten distracted with a different novel that I'm working on, so it's not the end of the world, but I just feel like I spent all that grant money on it and stuff, and there's no way I can publish it now because everyone's just going to be like, well, it's exactly like that other book that came out.
But we have a storyteller in the studio today. Can you put your anger behind you for an interview?
I think I can, and luckily, she is a memoirist, so it's very hard for her to steal her ideas from other people. So, let's welcome into the Skype studio, Naturi Thomas.
Hi, Naturi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. Thank you for coming on. I'm also a writer, but I don't write memoir or children's books or stage plays or anything, so I think this will be a good discussion.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with your new book, How to Die in Paris, a memoir. Maybe for our listeners, could you give a brief synopsis that will make them want to go out and buy it?
Absolutely. When I turned 30, I realized I was pretty unhappy with my life, my job, where I lived, and I realized I hadn't ever left the country. So I sort of took off for Italy, and everything was fine until I got a nannying tutoring job. That didn't go well. And I realized I was growing more and more depressed. I was sort of trying to escape my life, and my life kept following me. So I was at my wit's end, and I decided I just wanted to end it all. But I didn't want to take my own life without having seen Paris first. So I went to Paris with the idea of jumping off the Eiffel Tower. And when I got there, I realized I'm really, really afraid of heights. And since I had spent my last money on the train ticket to Paris, and at the time I didn't have any way of contacting people, I found myself homeless for 3 weeks.
Wow. So how long was it from basically the end of the book till you actually started writing it or decided you wanted to write a book about it? Was there a long time that you had to separate yourself from it, or were you so in it that you just started writing? How did that work?
Oh, that's a really good question. I didn't know actually when I was out there if I was going to make it out alive. So while everything was going on, I started writing things down. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me. So I would write down how tired I felt, what I had done during the day, the people I had met, how hungry I was. At first I had a journal, and then when I ran out of journal paper, I started writing on napkins that I got from cafes. I would rip flyers off the walls and write on the back. It was really important for me if I did die, to sort of like let the people who I would have left behind know that, okay, yeah, I did try to kill myself. That was stupid. But after that, I really did try to, find a way to get myself out of this. And also, I was trying to make sense of my life. I wanted the people who I would have left behind to know that I, I, I had changed my mind, and I realized that life was worth living, and I gave it my best shot.
Well, this book is extremely well written. Not only just balance of humor and despair and the detail. I'm very impressed by the structure because it's structured like present time and then flashbacks. And I was wondering how that idea came in to do the flashbacks because it really helps tell the story, I think.
Oh, thank you. Okay. When my first draft of the book, it mostly talks about the 19 days that I was in Paris and my time in Italy. And then my mentor was like, you have to put in some stuff about your childhood. And I was like, well, what does, being suicidal and homeless in a foreign country have to do with my childhood? And but I'm really glad that she pushed me to do this because I think it gives more shape to the book. It explains how I got to that place. It explains a lot of the questions that I had to ask myself to get myself out of that really dark position. But in a way, that was the most challenging aspect of the book because while I did have really rough childhood, I think by any estimates, there was also a lot of fun in my family. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, and there were some good memories as well. So I sort of had to like balance that kind of like dissonance in my mind. Like how could I have been so happy sometimes and then just so like miserable at times?
I see.
Did you ever just want to distance yourself from the memories as you were writing?
I really started making it into a book when I managed at the end of the 19 days to stay in a youth hostel for a while. At the ground floor there was like a cafe bar, so every day I would sit at the table and try to make sense of my notes, try to put it into a story. And at first it was just going to be for me. But I was so like I was still kind of like shaken by everything that had happened, and also all the good luck I had too. That I in order to distance myself, as you said before, like I would write it in the second person, like you did this, you did that.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And then I was like, well, you can't do that if it's going to be a book. So I tried to write it in a third person because I wanted to keep myself separate from it, but the narrative didn't flow. Like it wasn't like it was my story. And only when I started saying I did the book really like take shape.
That's interesting. That's probably a good exercise for people who are learning to write to play with perspective.
Yeah, I think so because I mean some people could write a memoir and using the third person would work or even the second person. I've never read a memoir in the second person, but that might be interesting.
Pretty much all I know of is those Choose Your Own Adventure, which are definitely not memoirs.
Oh, I remember those books. Those were so much fun.
Yeah, they were my favorite in elementary school.
Yeah.
Has anyone who is in the book read the book?
Oh, let me see. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I mean, I was like sort of traveling. So the people I met were people I met very briefly. A few of my family members have read it, of course, my extended family. And they've been great about it. I'm estranged from my parents, which and you'll read why if you read my book. I sort of kept my distance from my extended family, but I think reading the book kind of brought us closer. So that's like one of the best results from the book that, it's like I got my extended family back.
Mm-hmm. That's nice.
Yeah.
I was in Paris for only 2 days, and reading some of your descriptions of it brought back memories that I probably wouldn't have remembered at all because they weren't, important or anything. But just your descriptions were really vivid, and I was wondering if when you wrote the book, how you captured the place, especially with flashbacks, just because it was so long ago. If did you go back to any of these places, or did you use a little poetic license and make stuff up?
No, I didn't make anything. If I had made anything up in the book, I think I would have made myself look a little better, like a little more sensible. So, I think there's a tendency to have a really strong memory about things that really affected you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I went to I think I went yeah, I went to Dublin for St. Patrick's Day last year, and it was great. I had a blast, but it wasn't traumatic. So I don't remember as much as I do of Paris.
I guess that's yeah. I've heard that the point of emotions are to put stuff into your long-term memory. So that's why usually the things that we remember the best are things that were the most emotional. So I guess that makes sense.
For better or for worse. And yeah, 2 days in Paris isn't enough. You have to go back.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. It was like a spring break tour of Europe on a bus. So like we like, okay, get off the bus. You have 2 hours in this place, and then get back on the bus. So
Oh, okay, like one of those teen tours or something.
it was like a Cosmo bus tour.
Okay, yeah, I used to see those. I used to see those in Europe, and the kids would be like, "Where are we now?" You know.
I don't recommend it at all. I recommend just going out and making your own vacation.
Who are your favorite storytellers?
Oh gosh, my favorite storytellers. I mentioned so many people in the book, like so many authors in the book. When I was reading it back, I was surprised. I would say like Truman Capote, Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou, like, and I used to read books about her life. I was like, wow, one day I want my life to be exciting like that, and it was. Toni Morrison. Oh God, Carson McCullers, who wrote Member of the Wedding. Oh boy, who else? Who are my favorite memoirists? It's weird because I read so many books, but the names of authors don't really like pop out at me when I need them. Um, okay, like every year in the winter I reread Anna Karenina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's like a Russian novel, so I feel like okay, it's cold now, time for Anna Karenina. Like that's one of my favorites. Yeah. You're like, okay, I'll just believe you on that. When I'm in New York, I go to a lot of readings and I do a lot of readings. And I think that's an invaluable experience for any writer to go to readings and also just to read their own work aloud in front of an audience. Because writing, I mean, as you know, it can be pretty isolating.
Hmm.
But just to get that ready feedback, that I mean, that's why a lot of like TV and movie stars like go back to do the theater because just that sense of community and instant feedback is just like so gratifying.
Right. And speaking of community and feedback, we share a writers group in common. So how did that impact your writing?
Oh, that I mean, I think that really was one of the instrumental forces in making me turn this into a book. Because when I got back to New York, I was like, I can't ever show anybody this book because people are going to think I'm crazy. And then I started reading aloud little bits of it, and I got such support and such great feedback and all this encouragement to keep going, keep going. And they told me they're like, you are crazy, but it's interesting, so just go with that. Like sell the crazy. So I was like, thanks guys. Yeah, I mean I love Zach's group. Zach, I mean that's been one of the instrumental forces in making me who I am as a writer.
I was in a writers group in Madison, Wisconsin, where I grew up, starting when I was in high school. So that helped me a lot, and it made me a lot more comfortable.
Oh wow, okay, okay. So were they supportive of?
Very, very supportive. Yeah, absolutely. But also critical, which was what I needed because I was a high schooler and I was like, "Hey, look, I can write a novel." And they're like, "Wait a second."
Yeah. I mean, were you working on a novel in high school? That's pretty precocious.
Yeah, not a good novel, but yeah.
Okay. I when I was around 15, I wrote a romance novel, and I had never even dated anyone at that point. And I wrote like really like long love scenes, and I found it a few years later, like maybe in my mid 20s, and I read some of the sex scenes to my roommate, and she laughed so hard I had to go down to her car and get her inhaler. She's like, what is that? That's physically impossible. I'm like, I was 15. I was just making stuff up. But so yeah, that's not going to be hitting the shelves anytime soon, that novel.
Except for maybe it's a comedy.
I do have a novel that I'm working on now that I would like to get out this year if possible. Start sending it out to publishers.
Oh, do you want to tell us about it?
Sure. Okay. It's about a woman who discovers that her old best friend is shooting a movie in her town. And like 10 years before, she and her best friend had been like starving actresses in New York, and then the best friend kind of stabbed her in the back and betrayed her, and she got famous, and my protagonist sort of had a nervous breakdown, and now she's a therapist living in the suburbs. So she goes down to the movie set just to pay her friend a visit, and she doesn't know why she's going, maybe for closure, maybe to accuse her, and she ends up getting cast in the movie.
Wow.
And she ends up like falling for the director, who's the movie star's boyfriend, and the movie star is not happy about any of this. So
Cool. Well, that's exciting.
I hope so, yeah.
So you have an agent?
I do. I had an agent. I had an agent for the memoir, and she was great. She really took a chance on a newcomer, especially when there's so many memoirs out now. And so, like, I'm totally indebted to her. She does mostly memoir though, so I am going to be looking for someone who handles a broader range.
Right. I'm always curious on how people got published because there's a very small handful of ways to do it, and I don't think most people realize the biggest way that people get publishing gigs is just from knowing people as opposed to the slush pile.
Oh, so I mean that's interesting. So you think it's sort of like a who you know type of thing?
Yeah.
And one thing I'm finding interesting is do you know Amazon's gonna, kind of stick their hand in publishing as well?
Yeah, I saw that. I don't think anyone's happy about that.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so either. But from an author's point of view, I think that might like really like, you know, give us a lot more freedom and a lot and the ability to reach more people and just have more creative control.
5 or 6 years ago, it was self-publishing was like a big taboo. Like you weren't supposed to self-publish because it would ruin your chances of ever being published by a real publisher. And of course, the main goal is to get published by a real publisher. Now I think that's completely gone on its head. I think that people are starting to respect it a lot more. And if the book does really well in self-publishing, that will actually get the attention of the publisher, and the publisher might want to republish it and redistribute it. So, yeah, it's definitely undergone a lot of changes, and I think Amazon's just trying to play into that.
Yeah, that's definitely.
So you are in London now? Are you in school?
Yeah, I'm in grad school. I'm attending City University of London. And the reason I chose City was because, well, they're the only nonfiction masters in the country, so it wasn't a difficult choice. Yeah, but I mean it's a great program. But the reason I chose London, well, first of all, I wanted to live in London for a while to see if I liked it, and I do, I love it. And yeah, not I'm getting I have to get used to the rain. The weather is something to get used to, but the rest of it is like amazing. Um, but there are so many MFA programs in America that I just wanted to go somewhere where maybe like everybody doesn't want to be a writer. I know that sounds a little weird, but I just felt like if it's a smaller concentrated bunch of people who are doing it, then maybe the class will be sort of like a little bit more advanced.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are like amazing programs. Like the number one program, without question, is Iowa.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, if I had applied, I would have applied, and had I gotten in, that means I would have had to spend 2 years in Iowa, and I don't know if I could have done that.
I had the exact same thing. I was going to apply to Iowa for grad school, and I was just like, after living, I spent a semester in London, and then after living there, I was like, I have to live in a big city, and Iowa is the opposite of that, and I don't think I could handle it.
Yeah, I remember something Juno Diaz said. He was like, I'm glad I went, and I'm glad I'm not still there. Yeah, I always wondered why don't they have an MFA program in Hawaii?
I guess it would probably fill up the island.
Yeah, I mean, even if it were crap, everyone would sign up for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But my group is like fantastic. A lot of them have already been published in different genres and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm learning as much from them as I am from the teachers. So I feel like I made a pretty good choice.
Very cool.
You've also written a kid's book.
Yeah, a long time ago in 1997. It's called Oh, It's Mama's Birthday, and it's about a little boy who gets $1 for allowance, and then he finds out it's his mom's birthday, and he goes around the city trying to get her a present. I think what happens. Okay, first he tries to buy her a dress, and he can't buy her one for $1, and then he buys her candy, but by accident he eats it.
Accident.
Yeah, yeah. And then he buys her a balloon, and his friends see it and they want it, and the balloon just, it just, manages to escape in the scuffle. So then he goes home and he's all bummed out, and I won't give away the end.
Okay.
It's a cliffhanger.
You have to pick up the book to find out what happens.
Yeah.
So, do you have a story writing process, like when you're writing a book, like let's say your memoir? I mean, do you outline? Do you just keep writing? Do you sort of write at the same time of day every day, or like?
No, I should write at the same time every day, but it's like I don't. I think for the next book, I want to try to get a routine. I wouldn't recommend my way of working to anyone. It's wildly inconsistent, and you know what? It varies with every project. Like How to Die in Paris, there was an urgency, like I had to get it out, and I had to get it out immediately before I before I wouldn't have forgotten everything that happened, but everything wouldn't have been as fresh as far as dialogue and stuff goes, and the feelings behind the book and everything. As far as other books, like my novel, I did have a routine. It's sort of like once I found the characters, they almost wrote themselves.
That's always good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think really like developing a character that not only that the reader's going to care about, but that you as a writer is going to care about is the hardest part of the process.
Even, let's say, villains should be sympathetic because to some degree, or relatable to some degree. Otherwise, you just don't believe it, and you don't really have that connection.
Absolutely. Actually, in my novel, the protagonist's husband, he a deeply flawed man, but I was fond of him. I thought he was funny. And then when I gave the book to some of my friends, they were like, "I hate Charlie." And I was like, "Really?" And I almost felt like, protecting him. Like, don't say that stuff about him. But I mean, in a way, it's good that they reacted so strongly. But I couldn't see it. I just kind of saw I just kind of saw sort of like this annoying person who was very pedantic and all. But everyone like totally like hated him. So I was like, wow.
At least you're creating an emotion of some sort.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
I'm working on a new book that's going to be nonfiction. And so I'm sort of like this is new for me. I'm sort of circling it. I'm writing like little notes on index cards and just whenever it hits me and I stick it in a folder and the folder's growing and growing and one day I'm just going to have to sit down and actually start working. So it's like I'm slowly approaching it.
We'll have to look out for that, and people can check out howtodieinparis.com.
Yes. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter under Naturi.Thomas. Yeah, I mean, How to Die in Paris is good, and that has contact information. The book is on Amazon. You can get it from Barnes and Noble as well, and also you can BarnesandNoble.com, and I mean, you could just like walk into Barnes and Noble too. Oh, and my publisher Seal Press, they have it on their website as well.
Yep, and that's Perseus, right?
Yeah, Perseus Books.
Excellent. Very cool. Thank you for being on the show today. It was very fun to have you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, this was a lot of fun to do. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. We'll stay in touch.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye.